much for sharing that insight, Julia Kazatobina, with us. Now we move on to our next news. The European Union has raised concerns over the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza, highlighting significant obstacles that continue to hamper aid efforts. Despite some progress, including increased fuel deliveries, the reopening of key routes, and more trucks entering the region, challenges remain substantial. An EU official has emphasized that a safe operating environment is still lacking, which severely restricts the large-scale distribution of humanitarian aid. The EU's foreign policy and humanitarian teams updated member states on these developments following an agreement with Israel aimed at improving aid access. The situation in Gaza remains dire as humanitarian operations face persistent barriers. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Dr. Punsara Amarasinghe. Thank you very much, Doctor, for staying with us. Now, how might these challenges affect the EU's influence and relations with Israel?
Well, for the past few months, EU's relationship with Israel has been extremely critical, because even in my previous statements to NewsX, I pointed out that how governments in Netherlands and some other countries in Western Europe stepped down from the free trade agreements with the State of Israel due to the ongoing war situation in Gaza. This is a fact on the ground. But having said that, we need to simply understand the real reasons for this escalation in Gaza. And everything was perpetrated by Hamas on the 7th of October in 2023. So that was the triggering point for the Israel strike in Gaza. And even after that, Israel has come up with demands. You release the hostages, we will end the escalation. We will end our offensive. So there were two demands, technically speaking, but none of the demands were accepted by Hamas. So this is the bottom reality we have to understand. But unfortunately, most of the countries in the European Union have not understood the rationale behind this ongoing conflict, which seems to be the critical point. No matter to which extent they pressurize the government of Netanyahu in Tel Aviv, which is highly unlikely to see the complete seizure of the military operations until the very last hostage, until the very last, the person who has been detained by Hamas comes back to Israel. So this needs to be understood as a realist ground.
And keeping that in mind, to what extent could the current restriction on aid delivery escalate tensions or impact the stability of Middle East?
Yeah, of course, in year 2002, Israel had the Abraham Accords with certain Gulf countries when the President Trump was in power for the first term. So everyone thought that there would be much of a better time between Israelis and the Arab neighbors. But the 2023, the trajectory has altered the whole dynamics for good. But now we see that countries such as Egypt and UAE, some certain other countries in the Middle East, keep pressurizing Israel through United States with the expectation that Israel will end all the hostilities, the offensive operations. But last week, Netanyahu ordered that a full-scale, full-fledged invasion, the conquest of Gaza, completely to crush Hamas. So when you are engaging in a military operation, you can clearly see that it becomes absolutely evident that civilians are likely to get wounded. That is a bottom reality. But what happens is, in Gaza, the most serious issue is the Hamas, the militants, are operating within the civil compartments. So that makes absolutely difficult for the IDF to identify or make the distinction between the civilians and the Hamas fighters. So they continue to mingle among the civilians. So they keep all the armed houses, ammunition within the civilian compartment. So that has been the technical problem which we can perceive from the Gaza war front. But of course, I do acknowledge the fact that there has been a huge famine and a food crisis in Gaza that has jeopardized the civilian life in Gaza to a complete misery. For that, yes, I must confess that their own so-called liberator, Hamas, is to be culpable and responsible.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Punsara Amarasinghe, for joining us and sharing your insights.